We are live here at the Tate Deck parking lot, getting ready for the dog walk as part of Kroger Kickoff before the Georgia Bulldogs take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Hello, everybody. My name is Brandon Adams. Welcome in. Still about probably 10 minutes away from the dog walk here for this Georgia home game today, so that gives us a little bit of time to talk about what's going to happen on the field between the Dogs and the Gamecocks a little bit later on. Of course, a chance to take your comments for those watching in on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube, so we'll do a lot of that and set the stage for the action here today. Great to have you with us, and of course, the weather here, beautiful today, warm but almost perfect conditions after what has been a very hot start to the season throughout the month of September as the calendar turns to October for the first Georgia home game here this month. It certainly feels like a nice fall day for Georgia fans, and despite the early start, there are plenty of tailgates all around the University of Georgia campus here today, and there's a real spirit of enthusiasm about the football game that's going to come later on. You may even hear part of the Red Coat Band playing the Krypton theme as kind of a way of getting this dog walk crowd fired up. Pretty good crowd on hand for the dog walk. Maybe not quite as big as it was for the Notre Dame game, much later start back during the month of September, but a lot of folks have decided to wake up early, basically responding to the challenge that Kirby Smart issued earlier this week to make sure they were there to make this dog walk look the way it needed to look, and then of course taking their seats inside Sanford Stadium and making the home field advantage for UGA against South Carolina today. We'll take a lot of your comments and all this before we wait for the dog walk to begin. A couple things for us to think about as the dog walk takes place. Keep your eye out for Tyson Campbell, a cornerback who has been injured, and somewhat murky, I guess, updates from Kirby Smart on that a bit this week. We'll see what we see with Campbell. If we're able to see any kind of hint with our own eyes that he might be ready to go today, or if Georgia might be holding him out. Same would go for Solomon Kinley, who's missed a bit of time as of late as well. Trayvon Walker was not seen a couple times during practices this week. Keep your eye on Walker, always, much like a lot of the 2019 signees, always among the best dressed Georgia players coming through the dog walk. Walker, because of his size and height, also not very easy to miss, so keep your eye on Walker here as well. That's been one of those Georgia players who's been a bit of an injury concern about here this week, so we'll pay a lot of attention to that as the dog walk rolls by here in a little bit less than 10 minutes' time. Also, we'll have some time for your comments here as well, and as I'm pulling up the comments on Facebook first and foremost, I will tell you there's also been a little bit of an interesting development with the point spread here within the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, many of you don't bet on the game, so you don't necessarily care about this from a betting standpoint, but in terms of a national perception standpoint, Georgia opened the week as a 24.5-point favorite. That number has dropped down to 21.5, maybe partially influenced by, some of the Georgia injuries at the moment, although it's not clear who among that group won't play or who among that group might certainly impact the outcome of the game if they didn't play. But usually in situations like this, there is some money coming in on South Carolina somewhere. Maybe not enough to swing the balance of the game in particular, but apparently some of the betting public out there thinking this game might be a little closer than the experts initially thought at the beginning of the week. So maybe at least a little something to keep your eye on as we head towards kickoff at noon here today. Let's also get ready to go on Facebook here. We'll take a lot of your comments and get your thoughts on what you think is going to happen. Dog walk about 6 minutes from right now, so we'll look forward to chatting with you until that goes down. Harry Dog walking by. Of course, a lot of Georgia fans always glad to see Harry come by. He's always good to get everybody fired up, especially these young fans who always seem to find their way up front near the railing. And, of course, they'll get a chance to shake hands with Kirby Smart and the Georgia players in a moment. But Harry Dog kind of acting as the warm-up act for that right now. On Facebook here for a moment, Henry Carter says, hunker down, Dogs, and get this W. I think Henry speaks for a lot of DawgNation right there. A chance to keep a streak alive for UGA. Been a long time since Georgia has lost a game in the SEC East, winning every game in 2017 and 2018 and thus far in 2019 against SEC's competition, all those games coming by at least a 2-touchdown margin. So that's a pretty good streak that UGA has alive today, and getting another W is certainly significant in that regard. Henry, I appreciate your comment. Glenn Lurman says that he's actually here at the dog walk and here for the first time. So, Glenn, hopefully you and your friends and family are having a great time and enjoying that today, and we appreciate you also watching along with us while you enjoy the dog walk for the first time, Glenn. So thanks for being here today. Chris Sapp says kick is too early. He likes the night games. Yeah, I think a lot of Georgia fans feel that way. I think that's why Kirby Smart kind of did his part to kind of poke and prod and see if he could get Georgia fans out of bed here this morning. So I think it's certainly a reality that a lot of Dog fans do like the later game. And it's kind of funny to walk around the tailgates here today. I said before that there was pretty good festive atmosphere with the tailgates. What I omitted from that discussion, I'll admit now, is there were also a few folks who were just now getting their table set up and still had a little bit of the sleep in the eye that had to be wiped away, and some of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, listen, this is a kind of a late-night town here in Athens, Georgia. A lot of folks having a good time on Friday nights, which makes it a little bit more difficult to get out here a little earlier. So there's definitely a pocket of Georgia fans who do enjoy the late kicks more so than the early ones. There's no doubt about that. By the way, you're watching our Kroger Kickoff. We appreciate you being with us here for that. And for those of you not lucky enough to be with us in Athens today, I know you're getting ready for a big game day watching party, or maybe you did that last night in a tailgate for your favorite high school team. Either way, whatever brand of football you enjoy watching, Fridays, Saturdays, even the brand played on Sunday, no better place to go to get stocked up for everything you need on game day than with our friends at Kroger. You can download the Kroger app. You can go to Kroger.com. You can get the Kroger Plus card, and you can get yourself some big savings on all those game day items, snacks, beverages, main courses, whatever else. You can get all of that at Kroger, and it's great to have Kroger as part of our Kroger Kickoff. Ooh, Josh Burns says that he just feels like it's going to be closer than people think. I should say it's John Burns who says that on Facebook. And, John, I guess I kind of understand where you're coming from on this. When I made my official prediction a bit earlier in the week, I did take South Carolina plus the 24.5 points. Do I think this is a one-score game or even a two-score game in the fourth quarter? Maybe not. But 24.5 is kind of a lot of points. Georgia, in its history against South Carolina since Kirby Smart has been here, has covered the spread in 2 of the 3 meetings versus South Carolina. But if you go back to 2016, it required a little bit of a fluke play, a Terry Godwin scoop and score, and an onside kick try from South Carolina to turn that into a 28-14 game, and ultimately a Georgia cover. It was an 8.5-point spread there that day against the Gamecocks. So being a little closer than the experts might think, you would certainly think the South Carolina game plan plays into that hand. 2 of the areas in which Carolina, despite the fact it's just 2-3 this season, 2 of the areas in which they've been pretty successful along the defensive line and with the running game. Now, Will Muschamp's teams of the last couple of years have not run the ball very well. This year, though, that's a little bit different. Rico Dowdle, Tavian Feast for the Clemson transfer, have provided a bit of a two-headed monster for the Gamecocks when it comes to running the football. They're averaging more than 200 yards per game. They're averaging, 7 yards per carry, something along those lines. So this has been a pretty successful Gamecocks running attack thus far. That serves 2 purposes today. Maybe it takes a little bit of the pressure off freshman quarterback Ryan Helinski playing in a big stadium and a hostile crowd. South Carolina didn't handle that role particularly well at Missouri a couple of weeks ago, and Missouri doesn't have very good attendance. So if you struggle on the road at Missouri, one can only imagine how difficult that would be when you're talking about playing inside Athens today. But a successful South Carolina running game, something they did not do well in Columbia, Missouri a few weeks ago, takes some of the pressure off him. And to the point of this game being closer than the experts might think, if the Gamecocks are running the football, they certainly have a chance to chew up some clock and limit the possessions and give themselves to keep the score and the scoring margin somewhat manageable. The other area in which South Carolina's maybe been a little bit better than you think this year is defensively. The Gamecocks have been pretty good. They're within the top 30 of ESPN's FPI on the defensive efficiency metric. You've got some individual guys like Javon Kinlaw and DJ Wanham who've had pretty successful seasons in the line of scrimmage. J.C. Horn, a defensive back that you might remember from the Atlanta area, has also had a pretty good year as well. Don't forget, Horn may be feeling like he has a bit of extra motivation today because he played his high school football in the Atlanta area like so many players do. Didn't necessarily get the attention from UGA, briefly committed to Tennessee before going to South Carolina. There'll be some players like that on that roster today for the Gamecocks, Horn included, who may have a little extra motivation today. Ultimately, do I expect Georgia to be seriously challenged by the Gamecocks? I don't. However, could this be the kind of game where Georgia needs all 4 quarters to put the scoring margin where UGA fans are more comfortable with it? That could certainly be the case. I think it's a really good comment. Chris Webb says Dogs need to open up the offense, go down the field, hit the tight end in the middle of the field. I kind of agree with you in both those regards. I think that Georgia needs to, much like you think of in baseball, a hitter kind of hitting the ball to all fields. I think when it comes to Georgia moving the passing game around, I think all areas of the field need to be attacked. Short middle, deep middle, long corner, right corner, sideline to sideline, having really very little tendencies when it comes to where you throw the ball, I think makes it overall more difficult to defend. I think that's a pretty good point. As far as opening up the offense, that's something that a lot of Georgia fans have also called for as well. And one area in particular that I pointed out on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger yesterday, that I'll mention here as a part of our Kroger Kickoff as well, is what Georgia does on 2nd 7, 2nd 8, 2nd 9. According to Pro Football Focus, Georgia has run the ball in those instances as much as almost any team in the country. They're in the top 5 in the country, I believe, when it comes to running on what we think of as second and somewhat long, 7, 8, 9 to go. So if you want to see Georgia open up the offense more, I think that's one of the areas in which you'd pay attention to that. Obviously, on obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, you're going to throw it, and Georgia's going to throw it a decent amount on 1st and 10. But on 2nd long, that's been that's been a heavy Georgia run. Now, it makes sense that Georgia would do that when it comes to running game efficiency. Georgia's essentially the most efficient running attack in the country. If you can run the ball on second long and set up third and short, you've just made third down more manageable. So there's a strategic benefit to running the ball for Georgia on second down. But if you want to be more explosive, you've got to pick your spots to do that. I think some people would say those second and somewhat long situations are a pretty good opportunity to do that. So pay attention to that today in terms of whether you want Georgia's offense to be more explosive or you like it the way that it is. In terms of the direction that it's moving, what it does on those second long situations are going to go a long way towards saying how that goes. Also, when you look at Jake Fromm's stats that a lot of folks have been proud of for him, the fact that he's completing somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of his passes, hasn't yet thrown an interception thus far this season. The trade-off for being more explosive means making, in some cases, more risky throws, deeper down the field, into tighter windows, throws that have a lesser chance of being completed. So a more explosive offense, there's going to be a little bit of a cost for that. You probably trade some efficiency for that explosiveness. That means the completion percentage for Fromm might go down a bit. That means you might see an interception added into the total, but you hope if you do that, you're trading that for a whole lot more big plays down the line. It's kind of the interesting comparison game that's going to go on for Georgia against the other national elite. A lot of those teams like Oklahoma and Ohio State or Alabama as well, putting up big point totals each and every week. Now, Fromm told us after the game last week against Tennessee, that's not what he's paying attention to. He's paying attention to the wins that his team's trying to get, and no one can argue that the Georgia game plan has worked out pretty well. But the conversation about how it might evolve as the season progresses, that's not going to stop anytime soon either. We'll do a few more comments on Facebook, and then we'll head over to YouTube. We are also probably now only a couple of minutes away from the dog walk here as part of a Kroger Kickoff, and glad to have you as a part of this program here today. Mark Cole brings up a really good point. We need to make sure that our run defense gets going early. That's right. Georgia protecting another streak here today. Only team in America not to have given up a rushing touchdown all season long. That's the kind of thing they want to guard against here today. Obviously, they like to see that maintained. But as I said before, Gamecocks have also been good running the football. And with Jordan Davis' status somewhat uncertain, now Smart has been hopeful about Davis, even dating back to last Saturday. But we can't know for sure how much he's going to play until we see that with our own eyes. That means stopping Dowdle and stopping Feaster. That means that's even more important. Now, I think the good news in that regard is last week with Davis not in the game, Georgia was actually pretty effective. We got a chance to see Julian Rochester for the first time this season. All indications are Rochester played pretty well, and it was kind of a valuable thing to be able to have him for Georgia last week. The other defensive lineman that Georgia's using that rotation seemed to be doing pretty well. The stats certainly seem to tell that story as well. Now, Smart said this week he wanted to see more open field tackling, edge rushing plays, as a for instance, where he wants to see tackling improve. In his mind, he knows that that's the kind of thing that can subside as the season progresses. Guys get tired, guys maybe fatigued, maybe lose their focus a little bit, and he says you got to be very careful about that as you head towards the season. But I think that's a pretty good point to bring up, that if you're identifying 4 or 5 things where you want to really be paying attention to and judging during the game how it's going, keep your eye on that Georgia rush defense. Keep your eye on how much Davis, big number 99, it's hard to miss him. Keep your eye on how much he's in the game and how Georgia does when he's not in the game when it comes to stopping the South Carolina run. My guess is from a game plan standpoint, Carolina comes out pretty heavily trying to establish that. I know they saw what Marquez Callaway and Juwan Jennings, the Tennessee receivers, did last week. I don't think they're too tempted in that regard. Now, Carolina's got its own pretty good receiver, actually probably 2 of them. Brian Edwards certainly, or Trey Smith may be there as well. But I don't know that Carolina's too tempted by what they saw from Tennessee in the first quarter last week. Tennessee threw the ball last week because they had to, and ultimately for them, at least in the first half, it worked, so credit to them for that. But in terms of South Carolina, I think they feel like they've got an opportunity to run the ball in a way that Tennessee with Ty Chandler probably did not necessarily feel that way a week ago. We are about 5 minutes overdue for the dog walk. That means it should be coming up any time now. You'll be able to hear it when it happens because the cheers will go up. Those are not folks cheering for me, unless they're just cheering for me to shut up. Those are folks who are ready to see these Georgia buses roll in and get a chance to see this Georgia team. Kirby Smart will be coming through, the Georgia players after that. Keep your eyes, as I said before, on Trayvon Walker when he comes by, on Tyson Campbell, on Solomon Kinley when he comes by. Pay close attention to what some of these guys who we've talked about in kind of an injury status situation. We'll see what we see for them. And we'll see these Georgia players maybe smile for the last time before the game takes place here at noon. It's always fun for me to see the way these players, so focused during the week, on the task at hand during practice. Georgia practices are obviously notoriously intense, and the players usually wear an intense face to those practices when they speak to the media afterwards. Same way on the field for the game. However, for a brief moment with all these kids lined up on this railing for the dog walk, it's fun to watch Kirby Smart smile for a minute. It's fun to watch the Georgia players do the same thing. They seem to genuinely enjoy this time to relax and express some gratitude back to the fans who support them so well. It's one of the reasons why the dog walk has become so popular. It's these Georgia players in kind of a more calm and relaxed moment before the real intensity inside the stadium takes place. They get on their uniforms and they get ready to go against South Carolina at noon. I'm proud to be able to show this to you as part of our Kroger Kickoff coming up any moment now. And as I said before, it is great to have you a part of the program. Over here on YouTube for a moment, Ann Weber says, stop the penalties, please. And I thought Kirby Smart was interesting on that because it was a continuation of a topic that Kirby's been pretty consistent on for the last 3 years. Kirby is not as anti-penalty in all regards as you might think a football coach would be. And I think that Smart's right about this. Clearly there are sloppy penalties from time to time where you say, pre-snap for instance, where you say those are the kinds of things that can get you beat. We know what that looks like. Kirby, though, is also of the mindset that an aggressive team can't necessarily expect to be penalty-free. Smart said this very succinctly this week. I thought it was pretty interesting. He said if you look year over year at the teams that win most, they are not necessarily the least penalized. So I guess how we as observers of this team would handle that information, when you watch the game here today and you see a penalty come for Georgia, does it look like the kind of sloppy pre-snap thing that could have been corrected, or the kind of in-game situation that maybe you should have known better than? Or is this an aggressive player trying to make a big play? If it's an example of the latter, Kirby Smart might not be quite as critical of that moment when you go back and watch game film as you might think, but I think that's a really good comment. Back over here on YouTube for some more. Trayvon Bolin says, love Coley's play calls last week. Yeah, I think that James Coley's found himself a little bit of a rhythm when it comes to calling plays for Georgia. There was a lot to like about what happened for Georgia last week, getting multiple running backs involved, for instance, finding a way to get more throws and catches for Lawrence Cager and Demetrius Robertson. You involved a lot of guys in the offense last week for Georgia, and over the course of the game, Georgia got a chance to do something that Kirby Smart and James Coley believe they can do in every game, which is eventually wear down the opponent. So when you think about Georgia getting off to fast starts, that's something that's been a hot topic among fans after the Notre Dame and Tennessee game. Also think about how the Georgia game plan prepares teams to be dominated by the Dogs in the fourth quarter. That's certainly something that's been the hallmark of Georgia a lot in the Smart era, and maybe another example of that last week against the Vols, and the James Coley play calling probably aided in that regard. Josh Raymer says, this is like maybe the most honest comment we'll get all day long. Josh says, I want to see total game domination, not just in the second half. And Josh, I know where you're coming from. I think a lot of Georgia fans are kind of the same way. I kind of joked about that this week on our program DawgNation Daily, that if you look at the way that you win a national championship now, it's to build the best offense in the country and build the best defense in the country and try to win all your games 50-10. You know, the best way to win a close game is to not play one. And so establishing that level of dominance right now in the month of October, while it may be to some degree an unobtainable goal, no team has been – there are lots of perfect records in college football, but no team has played perfectly yet. Maybe an unobtainable goal for Georgia too, but certainly I think you're very honest in saying that's what you want to see. And I think a lot of Georgia fans are probably feeling much the same way, and maybe today will provide another step in that direction for UGA for more than just a dominant win, but maybe kind of total annihilation that UGA fans kind of crave. All right, we'll take a few more of your YouTube comments here. And there's a sort of a restlessness in the crowd. The flags are out. That kind of means we're getting all that much closer to the start of the dog walk. When it happens, we'll swing the camera around and give you a chance to see these Georgia coaches and players when they come by. Forever Frogging says, I hope that Zeus and James Cook get to play more today. Mike Griffin at DawgNation.com had a pretty interesting piece up, quoting Smart from his radio show on Thursday, kind of talking about the usage of James Cook thus far. So make sure you check that out before the game if you get a chance to at DawgNation.com. All right, the cheers go up. That means that the buses have arrived. So give us a chance to swing our cameras around, and you'll get a chance to see these Georgia coaches and players when they walk by in just a little bit as a part of our Kroger Kickoff and the dog walk here for the South Carolina game. Of course, fall is here. It is a nice temperature day. It also means pumpkin flavors are back at Kroger, pumpkin spice coffee, pumpkin scented candles, everything else. And also big savings on Halloween candy and Halloween decorations. So as you're getting ready for fall and Halloween, don't forget to check out your local Kroger for all of that. And Of course, I know you're ready to see the dog walk, and here on the Kroger Kickoff, it is on its way in just a moment. Players are getting off the bus now, and you're going to see them in your own eyes in just a little bit. Always funny to see which players you see first from a long way away. The very tall Ben Cleveland, easy to spot. Andrew Thomas, much the same way. Kirby Smart out front, as he customarily is. They've got cheerleaders flanking them on both sides. And as I said before, a really impressive crowd for the dog walk. Early start, but these fans excited about SEC play. As Georgia tries to stay unbeaten on the year, keep its streak of home games alive. Haven't lost a home game in more than 2 years. Streak of SEC East domination alive. And these Georgia players heading that way with all of that on their mind. You see the Georgia cheerleaders walking in front of you right now. They're ready for another day between the hedges. You hear the cheers going up. And that can only mean one thing. First players you're going to see, Andrew Thomas and Cade Mays, high-fiving across the aisle there. DeAndre Swift, Trey Hill shortly behind them. Isaiah Wilson coming in, and then right in front of you, Rodrigo Blankenship. Here comes offensive coordinator James Coley. A lot of Georgia players coming by. Here's Jake Fromm, looking sharp today in a blue blazer. Demetrius Robertson comes in front of your screen. Here comes Charlie Warner. There's Georgia coach Kirby Smart giving his high fives to both sides, working it like a politician almost in the rope line a little bit from Smart. Dog walk continues to roll by. There's Sam Pittman, the Georgia offensive line coach. There's Stetson Bennett, the backup quarterback. Eric Stokes coming by. Nakobe Dean bringing out another big-time blazer. As Georgia continues to file through here. Malik Herring coming by. A little more closely cropped haircut for Herring as of late. More Georgia players coming through. Dogs and the South Carolina Gamecocks coming up with a noon kickoff. Adam Anderson, who will be heavily involved on third down pass rush situations today. He makes his way in. More Georgia players continue to move on through here. Hearing a lot of those cheers continuing to go up. Fun to see Georgia fans having such a good time. Nolan Smith among the last Georgia players to come through. Few more still here to come. A lot of these dogs taking their time, soaking in this moment. As Georgia gets ready to take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. We mentioned Trayvon Walker before. Here comes Walker right now, going short sleeve today with a cast on his arm. You may have caught that on our camera, cast on the arm for Trayvon Walker. So hopefully you got a chance to pick that up. That was one of the guys we wanted to see. Walker is with a cast right now. So that is kind of an interesting update for a guy that has not been seen at Georgia practices for a couple times this week. There had been some rumors that he was wearing some protective braces, and we just saw that there, a cast on the arm for Trayvon Walker. So Walker's a guy that played a lot on third down for Georgia last week, a part of that pass rush situation for Georgia on third down. They've used a lot of freshmen there in that regard. He's obviously a big part of the Georgia special team situation there as well, and he's a five-star signee. So a little bit of a news update there at the end. Walker, we now have seemingly another understanding for why he was apparently limited at practice this week. So we will be in the forum on this topic with more at forum.DawgNation.com. Check in for DawgNation.com as well for more information on this as the dog walk has taken place, and we've seen Walker with the cast there at the end. So after the game, don't forget today we'll be live at the UGA bookstore for our Pella Window post-game show. And, of course, as I said, throughout the game at the forum at forum.DawgNation.com, plenty of updates on DawgNation.com and on Twitter at DawgNation as well. Thanks for being a part of our Kroger Kickoff. Get ready for your game-watching party by stocking up on items at Kroger. We'll see you again next time right here on the DawgNation video channels.